Hello? Testing. Okay. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another wire wrapping tutorial. Today, I will be showing you 5 different ways to wrap Briolette crystal. Today's episode is brought to you by you and me. My channel is completely funded by me and wonderful viewers like you, so please subscribe if you love learning how to do stuff like this. It really helps the channel. Starting off with number 1, the triangle jump ring. We are going to begin by bending a 45-degree angle in a piece of wire that will fit inside the holes of your crystal. So I am using 22 gauge sterling silver wire. Now I'm going to measure a 1/4 inch and mark it with my pencil. Place the chain nose pliers right on the mark and bend it 45 degrees towards the middle. Now do the same for the other side. Measure a 1/4 inch, mark, and bend 45 degrees. Trim the wire tails so that the ends fit perfectly into the drilled hole of the crystal. Now all you need to do is gently squeeze the pointed top end of the triangle bail to secure the jump ring in place. Next up, number 2, wrapped loops. Taking a 4-inch length of 22 gauge wire, or whatever wire fits the drilled hole of your crystal, with the chain nose pliers, bend a 90-degree angle. Make a loop using the round nose pliers. Add your Briolette crystal. Leave a gap between this next 90-degree angle and your gemstone to accommodate a few wrapped coils. Make your loop go the same way as the first loop. You want to have this part mirrored. Holding one loop with your chain nose pliers, use the round nose pliers to grab the tail end and wrap the coils around the loop. You want to go one side at a time to make sure it's even on both sides. Trim the ends on the same side and tuck in the sharp ends. I'm using the round nose pliers to tuck in these ends because it has a more narrow tip to get into these small spaces. On to the next. Number 3, the wrapped briolette. This one is a classic. Take your wire, in this case, still using the 22 gauge round. Add your briolette and bend the wire upwards. Take the other side and also bend that upward, making the wires cross over the top of the briolette. Take the side that isn't attached to the spool and bend it straight up, aligning with the top point of the crystal. Now, take the other wire and start wrapping it around the wire we just bent. Carefully start wrapping the wire down and over the top part of the crystal. It's important to take your time here and make sure everything is straight and you're wrapping it tightly and evenly around the top point. Keep wrapping the crystal until you get to the bottom of the drilled holes. Trim the spool wire, leaving about 2 inches of wire tail. Back to the topmost wire. Leave a little space and start the loop by bending a 90-degree angle with the chain nose pliers. Finish the loop using the round nose pliers. Hold the loop with the chain nose pliers and grab the tail wire with the round nose and start wrapping a coil to close the gap. Trim the tail towards the back of the loop and tuck it in. Take the other wire tail and bend it diagonally over the entire wrap. Coil it a few times underneath the loop. Trim and tuck this end also towards the back of the wrap. Moving on to number 4, the wrapped briolette spiral. This one is similar to the last in technique, but we will add a little detail. Starting off like the last one, thread your briolette onto your wire. Bending both wires to the top point, making an X. Bend the not spool side wire straight up, aligning with the point of the crystal. Start with this loop right away by bending a 90-degree angle and wrapping a loop around the round nose pliers. Coil this wire twice. Leave a small gap between the point and the loop and trim the ends. Tuck in the sharp end towards the back of the piece. Start coiling the spool end of the wire around the top part of the crystal only a couple times. Now spread out the wrap by going directly under the wires that is in the drilled holes. Only wrap this once or twice. Trim a small tail, maybe about 1/4 to 1/2 inch beyond the crystal, and file the end a little bit so it's not sharp. Make a small spiral loop on the end and keep spiraling the wire until it lines up to the middle of the piece. Number 5, the wire-framed briolette. This next one is my favorite and the most complicated. We start this one off with a 4-inch piece of 20 gauge square wire. I'm going to mark the halfway point here at about 2 inches. Then I'll take my chain nose pliers and make a sharp bend at that mark. Place the briolette point side down into the bend and start to shape the wire around the gemstone. This doesn't have to be super tight. It just needs to be the general shape of the stone. Make adjustments to make it look symmetrical. Now grab a thin weaving wire. I'm using 28 gauge here. Thread the wire through the briolette and then wrap it onto the 20 gauge frame. I'm going to wrap this a second time to make sure that this is secure. I'm going to pull these wires tight. We want these wires to be sticking out of the inside of the frame like this. Next, take the chain nose pliers and bend each wire at the top bend of the briolette. Use the pliers to make sure that the top wires are straight and line up together. Make sure the gemstone is sitting evenly and the wrapped wires are symmetrical. Now grab a 4-inch piece of 22 gauge square wire. And bend the wire exactly how we bent the first, maybe slightly sharper this time. Place that wire over the top of the base frame wire, making sure that those thin 28 gauge wires are still on the inside of the bend. This part is a little tricky. You want to make sure that the points line up and the wrapped sections stay even on both sides. Once you have everything balanced, grasp the entire thing and shape this wire around the gemstone, trying to keep this wire sort of over the shoulders of the stone to keep it in place. Next, wrap the 28 gauge wire around the 22 gauge square wire to secure this wire to the frame below. Using the chain nose pliers to guide the wire helps. Pull the wire through with even pressure to make it tight. We want 2 wraps around both wires. Now do the same thing on the other side. Now back to the other side. Wrap the 28 gauge wire just around the single main frame wire 2 times. Gently squeeze the wraps to straighten and tighten the wraps together, and make any adjustments you need to keep everything looking nice and even. At this point, you can cross the two 22 gauge wires over the top of the piece, making an X. Keeping in mind, you want these top wires over the shoulders of the gemstone to keep it in place. Slowly, take each wire, one at a time, and place it down in between these 20 gauge bail wires that are sticking out. You want to carefully bend each 22 gauge wire around the 20 gauge frame wires. Do this carefully with the chain nose pliers. Since this is square wire, you want to make sure that you don't put any twists into the wire or else it won't look as neat. Now take the chain nose pliers and bend both 20 gauge bail wires up slightly at the same time. Then, take the round nose pliers and bend both of the 20 gauge wires around the pliers going towards the back of the pendant. Swing the tail ends of the 20 gauge wires to one side as you wrap around the pliers. Bring both wires up and wrap around the front of the pendant. I like to use my chain nose pliers to carefully squeeze this loop to tighten it up. Make sure you make each wire as even as possible. It can be difficult to get each wire lined up and straight, but this is so important, especially if you are using square wire. So take your time in getting this part right. Move slowly and use both pliers for leverage if you need to. Make sure these bail loops are the same size. This part is critical for a neat looking piece. Once you are satisfied with the neatness of the wires, trim the wires on the back side, leaving just enough space to press the sharp ends behind the bail loops. Now we will deal with these 22 gauge wires we left hanging earlier. Wrap each side back over to the front and trim the wires. Make sure to trim them so that there is enough room on the front to end the wire right at the gap in the pendant, so you can't quite see the ends. Twist the square wire back into shape if you need to maintain the linear quality with the bail wires. Tuck these ends into the front of the pendant, right below the bail wires. You may need to use the round nose pliers to get in that small space to press the ends down. Finally, we will deal with these 28 gauge wires since we are sure we don't need them anymore. Give them a final tighten with the chain nose. Then trim the ends and tuck the sharp ends into the inside of the frame. Use your fingertip to check for any sharp ends poking out. And there it is, the finished pendant. Now all you need to do is slap a chain on this and you have a perfect addition to your pendant necklace collection. If you don't feel like making one for yourself, you can let me make one for you by visiting my Etsy shop. These are listed for sale, and if you do head over to my shop, be sure to use coupon code SUBSCRIBER to get 20% off your whole order, because subscribers like you really help out my small business. If you're not subscribed already, consider being one if I taught you something or at least entertained you for a little while. So thank you all, and as always, thanks for watching.